And welcome back. As we go ahead and continue looking at inner classes, let's go ahead and take a minute to look at how and what happens when we have static inner classes. So a normal or non-static inner class, which is the kind of inner class we've been kind of discussing up to this point, has had a connection between each of its objects and the object of the outer class that created the inner class object. So among other things, this allows an inner class definition to reference an instance variable or invoke a method of the outer class. If you don't need this connection, you can make your inner class static by adding the static modifier to your inner class definition, as illustrated by the following example: public class outer class, private static class inner class. A static inner class can have non-static instance variables method, but an object of a static inner class has no connection to an object or of the outer class. So when we start talking about static, you have to understand that there are situations where you need an inner class itself to be static. If you create an object of the inner class within a static method of the outer class, then the inner class has to be static. This follows from the fact that a non-static inner class must arise from an outer class object. Also, if you want your inner class to itself have static members, then that inner class has to be static. Because a static inner class has no connection to an object of the outer class, you cannot reference an instance variable or invoke a non-static method of the outer class within the static inner class. So if we want to invoke a static method of a static inner class within the outer class, we simply preface the method name with the name of the inner class and then dot. If we want to name a static variable of a static inner class within the outer class, then we just preface the static variable name with the name of the inner class and again a dot for the invocation. So here I have a quick demo to demonstrate just some of the static modifier at work. And so we have this private class right here, which is our inner class, that is of course having a static method called print stars. And I have a prompt here set up. So we have please enter value displayed, and then it's going to get a value from the keyboard. So right now, if I go ahead and say inner class dot, and we call print stars, and we pass in a value, right now this of course will work, because we have a static method, so we're referencing it directly. So when I go ahead and run it, we can say, please enter value display. Let's go ahead and type in 4, and we get 4 stars here. Now, if we want to have this instead, let's say, be a static method, or a static class rather, if I change this to a private static class, now if I remove this modifier here, we of course still have this issue here, right? But if I had a class, let's say, so let's say an inner class, let's just call this obj, and this is of course an inner class, open close parentheses. Then if I say obj dot print stars, now we have of course a object that's referencing that. So now if I go ahead and rerun this, put 4 again, we got those 4 stars that are tabbed. Perfect. Now the only thing you might wonder is, well, what's if I go ahead and add it again in this static modifier? Do I need still this? And you notice now there's a warning here. It says it's to be accessed in a static way. So if I, of course, add that static modifier to the method, all right, notice now it's, of course, complaint. It says it's undefined, right? Because it doesn't know what it is. But if I grab an inner class and put that back on here, we, of course, can modify it that way. So just an important distinction to keep in mind if you, of course, are running that as a static method or as a non-static method when you start putting the static modifier here for the class. It doesn't necessarily affect the actual method invocation as much, but it might affect how you are using the rest of your class here within your program.